pour it every morning without thinking. The ritual is automatic now. The sound of the grinder, the smell filling the kitchen, that first sip before the day starts. Coffee feels like one of the few things you control. You picked the brand, you read the label, you paid for quality, or at least you thought you did. But what if I told you that the bag you trust most, maybe the one sitting on your counter right now, contains something you'd never knowingly put in your body? Not something that will kill you tomorrow. That's not how this works. These are compounds that accumulate, residues that build up over years of daily consumption, metals that cross the blood-brain barrier, mold toxins that inflame your gut every single morning while you think you're just waking up. This isn't about scaring you away from coffee. It's about understanding what you've actually been drinking. Let me show you. In 2014, a lab in California began testing popular coffee brands for something most people had never considered: heavy metals. Not because anyone suspected coffee specifically, but because they were running broad contamination screens across packaged foods. The results didn't make headlines. No recalls were issued, but the data was published quietly in a toxicology journal. And what it showed was this certain mass market coffee brands contained detectable levels of lead, cadmium, and acrylamide, a compound formed when coffee beans are roasted at high temperatures and classified by the state of California as a probable carcinogen. None of it was illegal. The levels detected were technically within FDA tolerance limits, which is a phrase that sounds reassuring until you understand what it actually means. It means the contamination is permitted, not absent. It means someone decided that a certain amount of poison is acceptable if removing it entirely would cost too much or slow down production. And here's the part that should bother you. Most of the brands that tested highest for these compounds were the ones you see everywhere. In America. The ones with the biggest marketing budgets, equatorial regions, the ones Colombia, that have been in your family's kitchen for generations. Vietnam, Ethiopia, where labor is cheap and environmental regulations are inconsistent. The beans are harvested, processed, shipped across oceans, roasted in industrial facilities, and packaged under brand names you recognize. Every step in that chain is an opportunity for something to go wrong, or more accurately, for something to be ignored because fixing it would eat into profit margins. Let's start with the soil. Cocoa isn't the only crop that absorbs heavy metals from contaminated ground. Coffee plants do it too. Cadmium, which damages kidneys and bones over time, gets pulled up through the roots and concentrated in the beans. In regions where industrial mining or old agricultural practices left the soil poisoned, every harvest carries that legacy forward. Then there's the processing. After beans are picked, they're often dried on open concrete patios or dirt floors. If it rains, they get wet. If they sit too long, they develop mold. Certain molds produce ochratoxin a mycotoxin linked to kidney disease and immune suppression. European countries test for it and set strict limits. The US does not require testing. So beans that wouldn't pass inspection in Germany get roasted and sold in Ohio without anyone checking. Roasting itself creates another problem. When beans are roasted at high heat, especially in large industrial batches where temperature control is inconsistent, a chemical reaction occurs. Sugars and amino acids combine to form acrylamide, the same compound that forms when you burn toast or fry potatoes. The darker the roast, the higher the acrylamide content. That French roast you love for its boldness, it's also the roast most likely to carry the highest levels of a neurotoxic compound. And finally, there's the question of where these beans actually come from. You might see 100% Arabica on the label and assume that means quality. It doesn't. It just means the species of bean. It tells you nothing about the country of origin, the farm conditions, the pesticide use, or whether the beans were harvested by underpaid workers or children. Because yes, child labor is still a documented reality in coffee production. And the brands that sell you convenience and nostalgia, many of them source from suppliers who rely on it. Let's talk about Folgers. The red container. The jingle you probably remember from childhood. The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup. It's been in American kitchens since 1850, and that longevity creates a kind of inherited trust. If your grandparents drank it, it must be fine. Right. Folgers is owned by J.M. Smucker, a massive food conglomerate. They don't grow coffee. They buy it in bulk from global suppliers, prioritizing cost over everything else. Independent testing has found Folgers contains some of the highest levels of acrylamide among popular American brands. The beans are roasted at high heat for uniformity and shelf stability, not for minimizing toxin formation. There's also the issue of transparency, or the complete lack of it. Folgers does not disclose where their beans come from. No country of origin, no farm certifications, no testing data. Just a red can that's been sitting in your cupboard for decades because it's cheap and familiar. Open a container of Folgers right now and smell it. That flat, slightly burnt aroma, that's not the smell of fresh coffee. That's the smell of over-roasted commodity beans that were probably sitting in a warehouse for months before being ground and sealed. Brew it and taste it. It's bitter, one-dimensional, with a harsh aftertaste that lingers. That's not what good coffee tastes like. That's what industrial coffee tastes like. For seniors who've been drinking Folgers every morning for 40 years, the cumulative acrylamide exposure adds up. For anyone with kidney concerns, the potential ochratoxin load matters. For families buying it because it's affordable, you're saving money now but paying later in ways you won't connect to your morning cup. Then there's Maxwell House, another legacy brand, another one owned by a multinational, Kraft Heinz. Same business model, buy the cheapest beans available, roast them fast and hot, package them with American flags and heritage branding. Maxwell House was one of the brands tested in that 2014 study. Acrylamide levels were elevated. Ochratoxin A was detected in multiple samples. And just like Folgers, Maxwell House refuses to disclose sourcing details. No transparency about pesticide use, no fair trade certification, no third-party testing for contaminants. But here's what Maxwell House does: disclose their marketing budget. They spend millions convincing you that their coffee represents tradition, quality, and American values. They don't spend that money testing beans or improving sourcing. They spend it on the story they want you to believe. Brew a cup of Maxwell House. Notice how thin it tastes, how the aroma fades almost immediately, how it leaves a filmy residue on your tongue. That's because the beans are low-quality Robusta or low-grade Arabica, roasted to the point where any remaining flavor is obliterated. What you're left with is caffeine delivery, not coffee. Let's move to something that markets itself as premium Starbucks, specifically their packaged coffee, sold in grocery stores, Pike Place, Roast Breakfast, Blend, French Roast. People assume Starbucks means quality. You pay $10 to $12 for a bag that costs $4 at a gas station, so it must be better. But here's the truth: Starbucks retail coffee uses the same commodity sourcing model as cheaper brands. They buy in massive volume from industrial farms. The beans are roasted dark, very dark, to create a consistent flavor profile across millions of bags. That darkness masks the quality of the beans underneath. Dark roasting also maximizes acrylamide formation. Studies have shown that Starbucks' darkest roasts contain some of the highest acrylamide levels among tested brands. You're paying extra for more of a compound you should be avoiding. And then there's the question of mold. In 2015, a controversial figure in the health space claimed that Starbucks coffee contained high levels of mycotoxins. Starbucks denied it, but they never published independent lab results to disprove the claim. They just said we meet all regulatory standards, which again means nothing if the standards allow contamination. What frustrates me most about Starbucks isn't just the product, it's the deception. They've built an empire on the idea that they're a premium coffee experience. They charge premium prices. But when you examine what's actually in those bags, it's commodity coffee roasted into oblivion and sold with a logo. Now let's talk about something that sounds healthier. Dunkin' Donuts Original Blend. It's everywhere. Grocery stores, gas stations, break rooms. The branding feels approachable, unpretentious. America runs on Dunkin'. Maybe you switched to it because Starbucks felt too expensive or too pretentious. But Dunkin' sources from the same global supply chains as everyone else. No origin transparency, no testing disclosures. Beans roasted for consistency and cost efficiency, not quality. Independent reviews describe the flavor as watery, burnt, and stale. That's not bias. That's what happens when beans are over-roasted and under-sourced. There's also the packaging. Dunkin' sells coffee in those orange bags with resealable tops, but the bags themselves don't protect the coffee from oxidation. Once opened, the coffee goes stale within days. You're drinking rancid oils and degraded compounds without realizing it because you've normalized what cheap coffee tastes like. For anyone drinking Dunkin' daily, you're not just consuming caffeine. You're consuming whatever pesticides were sprayed on those beans, whatever mold developed during drying, and whatever acrylamide formed during roasting. None of it is disclosed, tested, or regulated in any meaningful way. Here's one that might surprise you, Lavazza. The Italian brand, the one with the sleek packaging and the European pedigree. Surely that one is safe, right? Lavazza is one of Italy's largest coffee companies, and yes, they've been around since 1895, but age doesn't equal ethics. In 2016, labor rights organizations accused Lavazza of sourcing beans from farms in Brazil where workers were subjected to slave-like conditions. Lavazza denied direct responsibility, claiming they source through intermediaries, which is exactly the problem. When supply chains are deliberately opaque, companies can claim ignorance while benefiting from exploitation. Testing has also found that certain Lavazza blends contain detectable ochratoxin A. Not the highest levels, but present nonetheless. And because Lavazza's beans are often Robusta, cheaper and higher in caffeine, but also more prone to mold, the risk is real. The irony is painful. You buy Lavazza thinking you're upgrading, you're paying for Italian heritage, for espresso culture, for sophistication. What you're actually getting is industrial coffee with better branding and the same problems as cheaper alternatives. Let's talk about 8 o'clock coffee. The name evokes a simpler time, 8 a.m., the start of the day, a comforting routine. The brand has been around since 1859, which gives it a kind of nostalgic credibility. But nostalgia doesn't mean safety. 8 o'clock is owned by Tata Global Beverages, a multinational conglomerate. They source beans globally with no transparency about origin or testing. Reviews consistently describe the coffee as weak, bitter, and harsh. That harshness comes from over-roasting low-quality beans to hide defects. There's also the issue of price. 8 o'clock is sold as a budget option, which means corners are cut somewhere. And in the coffee industry, the corners that get cut are always the same: bean quality, pesticide use, labor conditions, and contamination testing. For seniors on fixed incomes who buy 8 o'clock because it's affordable, I understand the appeal. But affordable shouldn't mean unsafe. And when a company refuses to disclose sourcing or testing, you have no way of knowing what you're actually consuming. Finally, let's address the most dangerous category: generic store brands. Great Value from Walmart, Kirkland Signature from Costco, Kroger brand, Target's Good and Gather. These aren't brands in the traditional sense. They're private labels, which means the retailer contracts with the lowest bidder to fill the bag and slap a logo on it. The supplier changes. The beans change. The quality fluctuates wildly, but the label stays the same, so you never know what you're getting. Kirkland Signature Coffee is particularly deceptive. Costco markets it as a premium product, sometimes even claiming it's roasted by Starbucks, which was true for certain blends at certain times, but isn't consistent. What is consistent is the lack of transparency. No origin disclosure, no testing data, just bulk coffee at bulk prices with bulk quality. Great value coffee from Walmart costs $5 for a massive container. How is that possible when quality beans cost $8 to $15 per pound wholesale? Simple. They're using the lowest grade beans available, often Robusta, mixed with damaged Arabica, roasted to hide defects, and packaged with zero accountability. For families buying store brands to save money, I get it. But when you're consuming something every single day for years, the cumulative impact of low quality sourcing matters. The mold exposure matters. The pesticide residues matter. The heavy metals matter. And here's the cruelest part. The people who can least afford organic, tested coffee are the ones most exposed to contaminated commodity coffee. That's not an accident. That's how the system is designed. You might be wondering, if contamination is this common, why hasn't the FDA done something? The answer is simple and infuriating. The FDA doesn't require coffee to be tested for mycotoxins. They don't set limits for heavy metals in coffee. They don't mandate origin disclosure or pesticide reporting. The regulations that exist are minimal and rarely enforced. In Europe, it's different. The European Union sets strict limits for ochratoxin A in coffee. Beans are tested before they can be sold. Companies face real consequences for contamination. That's why European coffee brands often publish their test results openly. They're required to. In the US, there's no such requirement. So companies take the cheapest route. They buy beans in bulk, roast them fast, package them with heritage branding, and rely on consumer ignorance. Because as long as you keep buying, they keep profiting. And as long as they keep profiting, nothing changes. But here's the thing, not every coffee brand operates this way. Some companies actually care about what they're selling. They test for contaminants. They pay farmers fairly. They roast carefully. They're transparent about sourcing. Let me show you three. Purity Coffee is built around one idea. Coffee should be tested like medicine. Every batch is analyzed by third-party labs for heavy metals, mycotoxins, pesticides, and acrylamide. Results are published openly on their website. You can verify safety before you buy. They source exclusively from high-altitude organic farms where soil contamination is minimal. The beans are grown without synthetic pesticides, which means no glyphosate residues, no organophosphates, no neurotoxic chemicals. Roasting is done at lower temperatures to preserve antioxidants while minimizing acrylamide formation. The result is coffee that actually tastes clean, bright, complex, without the burnt bitterness of commodity brands. Yes, it costs more, about $18 to $20 per bag, but you're paying for testing, transparency, and quality that cheaper brands simply don't offer. For anyone concerned about cumulative toxin exposure, this is the standard. Bulletproof Coffee built its reputation on mycotoxin testing. The founder claimed most coffee was moldy, which the industry disputed, but Bulletproof backed it up by publishing lab results showing their beans tested clean. They source from high-altitude farms in Guatemala and Colombia, organic certified, fair trade verified. Beans are processed using the washed method, which reduces mold risk significantly compared to natural processing. Roasting is done in small batches at controlled temperatures. The flavor profile is smooth, low in acidity, without the harsh bite of over-roasted beans. It's designed to be gentle on the stomach, which matters for anyone with digestive issues. Bulletproof also discloses everything: origin, altitude, processing method, roast profile, testing protocol. That level of transparency is rare, and it should be the industry standard. Kicking Horse Coffee is a Canadian brand that proves you don't need to spend $20 per bag for quality. They're certified organic, fair trade, and kosher. Every bean is sourced from farms in Central and South America where workers are paid living wages and environmental standards are enforced. Third-party testing confirms low mycotoxin levels and minimal heavy metal contamination. The beans are roasted in the Rocky Mountains using Swiss water processing, which removes caffeine naturally without chemical solvents for their decaf options. The flavor is bold, rich, and balanced. Multiple varieties available: light, medium, dark, roasts. Something for everyone without compromising on safety or ethics. And it's available at most grocery stores for about $12 to $15 per bag. For families wanting better coffee without breaking the budget, Kicking Horse is proof it's possible. Go to your kitchen right now. Take out whatever coffee you've been drinking. Look at the label. Does it tell you where the beans came from? Does it mention testing? Does it show fair trade certification or organic standards? If the answer is no, you're drinking mystery beans. And mystery beans carry mystery risks. This isn't about never drinking coffee again. It's about understanding that your morning ritual deserves better than industrial waste roasted into submission and sold with a jingle. You don't have to trust me. You can keep drinking Folgers, keep buying Maxwell House, keep thinking Starbucks means premium, but now you know what you're actually consuming. And that knowledge changes everything. The best part of waking up isn't what they sold you. It's what you choose when you finally see the difference.